Thank you everyone for joining this lunch and learn session. I'm Mohammed Naim. The recording has started, right?
Yes.
All right. So I'm Mohammed Naim. I'm from the cloud solutions practice. I'm serving as a cloud engineering manager at Royal Cyber for the past, I guess, 1.5 years. And today I'll be discussing one important topic, which is understanding shared security responsibility model in the adoption of cloud hyperscaler, right? And before I deep dive into a technical discussion, right, I really appreciate you guys have joined this lunch and learn session. Of course, the biggest motivation for these sessions is the lunch, right? But rather than that, the main idea is because we've been involved, right, with international customers, we're working on different projects. So these lunch and learn sessions, they enable us to, gather our thoughts, share our experiences, and help each other out, and also to understand, okay, what sort of best practices we can adopt, what sort of solutions can we adopt to better serve our customers, right? So these sessions are extremely important, and of course I'm thankful to the organizing team for conducting these sessions and helping us get together for these. So yeah, moving forward. Okay. The agenda for today is a quick intro to the hyperscalers, cloud hyperscalers, right, and then we'll go into the shared security responsibility model, which is provided by the cloud environment, and then we'll evaluate few of the cybersecurity events that have occurred very recently in the space of cloud and IT, and then we'll evaluate what sort of best practices we can adopt while we're architecting new solutions, while we're migrating existing solutions to tier 1 cloud platforms. And then that's the main thing. We have some takeaways, we have a conclusion, we have a short and quick question answer session, right? So adoption of cloud hyperscalers, right? So this is something which is not very new for all of us, right? We are, especially the people who are from the cloud solution practice, they're all aware that how customers and how new requirements are coming from cloud solutions. But overall, if we speak generally, in the past 5 to 10 years, we've seen a very increase in the adoption of cloud hyperscalers, right? So just a quick recap of what cloud hyperscalers are. They're just the tier 1 cloud, public cloud platforms, right? We're talking about the big players, AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba, IBM, right? All these public cloud vendors, they are the cloud hyperscalers, right? And the reason why they're called the hyperscalers is because they have the capacity to give large-scale infrastructure to enterprises, right? So any new company, even which is a startup, right, or even if it's at a scale of a Fortune 500 company, it can easily adopt the cloud hyperscalers, and cloud hyperscalers have the bandwidth, have the capacity to give them that large-scale infrastructure. It has the capacity to give them that high level of reliability, performance, security, which is required at that scale, which makes them the cloud hyperscalers. The question is, why are companies moving towards cloud hyperscalers, right? And according to the Gartner, if you see this specific slide, from the market size perspective, in the past 5 years, there has been a continuous 20% growth in the overall cloud hyperscaler adoption, right? Even in the year 2023, the forecast is that there is going to be an approximately revenue of $590 billion in the cloud computing space. So that's very huge. Considering right now we are in a phase of financial crisis, economical crisis, we are in a phase of recession, layoffs, right, in the IT space, and yet the cloud computing industry, it continues to grow so rapidly, right? And the reason why it continues to grow is because cloud hyperscalers and public clouds, they've essentially solved all these general problems with which companies were facing on-prem, or which the companies were facing when they were managing their own data centers, right? So ये कहते हैं cloud is just someone else's computer, which is a joke in the cloud space. But essentially, it's no longer just someone else's computer, right? It has solved the problem of scalability, flexibility. कोई भी आपकी application है, you can scale up, you can scale down on demand, right? As per your requirement. As you grow, you don't have to buy large-scale infrastructures and maintain them. So that problem is solved. You have flexibility and variety of services. So it's not just a virtual machine, but it's like a variety of services. Like you have services across compute, storage, databases, networking, IAM. You have managed services like SNS, SQS, so on and so forth. Right? In the space of IoT, in the space of blockchain, in the space of AI. So we have several managed services which are available at scale on these cloud hyperscalers. So we have scalability, we have flexibility, we have cost saving, right? We don't need to buy those infrastructure to support those services. The speed of deployment has become very fast, very agile, right? So the continuous integration and continuously delivery processes, they become very fast, very easy. And then of course we have a good DR plans as well, because it's highly available, it's highly reliable. So we have infrastructure as code automations available over there. We have native solutions which support full-fledged disaster recovery simulations, as well as in case of any sort of incident, our response plan is very effective, and the application comes back up very quickly, right? So these are few of the reasons why companies are moving towards the cloud. So it's not going anywhere; it's only going to increase, right? So these are the problems and challenges that cloud hyperscalers have solved, right? But there's one problem which the cloud hypervisors and hyperscalers and these public cloud companies they're still facing, right? And that's the problem of security. And the reason is because even though they've done their part, right, it's not entirely up to them. It's a shared security responsibility model. जैसे हम कोई घर when we go and we rent out a place, right, to live, the landlord he can what can he do for security, right? He can ensure that the doors are there, the locks are installed, there's a security camera, but that's all he can do, right? अगर आप खुद दरवाजा खुला छोड़ के सो जाएंगे, so there's a high chance that you're going to get robbed, right? So security is always shared security responsibility model, whether it comes to our houses, whether it comes to the cloud, right? So shared security responsibility model is understanding what part the cloud is playing. So security of the cloud is something they are responsible for. And then security in the cloud is something where we need to help our customers, and if we are utilizing cloud for ourselves, then we need to be aware of what sort of security measures we can take, right? So very quickly, from an infrastructure perspective, physical security, right, and all these things related to hardware and all of that, that is something that the cloud hyperscalers they're fully responsible for. But when it comes to our own applications, their management, OS level patching, database security, right, networking configurations of our firewall, applying various IAM policies, all of that is something which customers and cloud users need to be aware of, and they are responsible for, right? So दो security vulnerabilities हैं जो भी recently आई है, log4j और circle CI, right? So this is something that we've seen very recently, and log4j it has been one of the most severe attacks or vulnerabilities that have occurred in the recent times, right? And just a quick recap of what happened in log4j was that essentially this is a library which was used by a majority of applications or majority of companies who were developing their solutions and workloads on cloud, or even not just on cloud but even on generally on internet, right? So because of this vulnerability, according to Checkpoint, 44% of the corporate world it was affected, right? And the primary because of this vulnerability, the primary fault was that there was some sort of remote code execution which companies were able to exploit, which the attackers were able to exploit and execute at a system level. So this is something which was very vulnerable, and there were security measures which were taken to solve this specific problem. But the main idea is how do we prevent ourselves from such a vulnerability in future. So any thoughts on this by any member? Because मेन चीज ये log4j की तो vulnerability का patch आ गया, सही है, और उन्होंने बोला या अपडेट करते हैं या और उनके measures हैं, but there are chances, right, कि इस तरह की vulnerabilities और भी future में आ सकती हैं. तो we need to architect and protect our infrastructure in a way where even if such vulnerabilities comes in the future, we're able to protect ourselves. So any thoughts on this by anyone? That's what Pani will do. Can I have some water? Thank you, sir. Right. So we'll be discussing about this, right? How we can protect our infrastructure for such open source vulnerabilities, because हम लोग अपनी applications के अंदर we are using these open source packages, right? We are using third-party vendors as well, just like Circle CI. Circle CI it is a deployment tool which companies adopt, right? A third-party deployment tool which companies adopt, and we give our tokens to Circle CI. Thank you so much. To ensure our CI/CD deployment processes. So whenever there is open source packages that are involved, whenever there are third-party platforms or vendors are involved in our application architecture, there's a serious chance of security vulnerabilities, right? So that is exactly what we need to address. And yeah, I think this one, I've added 2 more slides. I think that's not present. The one I shared, the teams. Can you bring that one up? Because I added 2 architecture diagrams as well. हाँ उसी मैंने टीम्स के उसमें लेक्चर पढ़ा लिया. Yeah, if we can get those slides right, that will be really helpful. Yeah. Anyways, while that architecture diagram comes up, so the main idea is, the architecture diagram which I made was evaluating two different architectures, right? So one architecture was where we were evaluating a scenario where log4j vulnerability would occur, and or a new vulnerability like log4j would occur, and how we would resolve that. So that was one architecture, and then there was another architecture where log4j vulnerability would be prevented. So these are like two architecture diagrams. If we can quickly show it, that'll be great. Can we bring that slide up? It's there on the teams. Sorry. So while they're bringing that up, right, I can discuss these security-centered approach and best practices that we can generally adopt, right? So CIS benchmarks. This is published by the Center of Internet Security. और ये जो है basically guidelines and principles across IAM, logging, monitoring, security, right? Which we can adopt and which we can implement in our platform. You saved the day. Anyways, right. So this is one architecture diagram that I really wanted to discuss, and I spent some time in the morning as well making this, so it was very disheartening that it came up, right? So हम लोग जो देख रहे हैं अभी ये GCP के ऊपर एक solution deployed है, right? It's a GKE cluster, right? It's a public cluster, and what's happening over here is that it's a traditional application, right? So it's deployed in a microservices architecture, right? And we have an HTTPS load balancer, so users will come and make request to this ingress load balancer, and then our request is going to be routed to the specific backend service, which is going to connect with the database. It's going to render some data, and it's going to show on the front end application, right? So very general application architecture, right? अगर इसको मैं वैसे देखूं from a general modernization perspective, it's very good, right? और GKE यूज हो रहा है, Kubernetes platform है, modern day architecture के ऊपर बनी हुई है, and we are using load balancer, we are using Cloud SQL, which is a managed database, right? So from this specific architecture, we will say, okay, from a performance perspective, from a scalability perspective, this is a very good or reasonably good architecture. But from a security perspective, there are a lot of vulnerabilities, right? अगर log4j जैसी कोई vulnerability इस specific application architecture के अंदर आती है, तो बहुत जल्दी exploit हो सकता है. Why? Because you can see it's connecting with a third party. So it's also talking about third party service as well, right? It may be container registry, it may be some sort of third party service through which it might be pulling some sort of data, or where might be pushing some sort of logs or pushing some sort of data, right? So it is communicating with a third party service publicly. It is communicating with the database publicly, right? And it is also reachable in a publicly accessible way. So right now, even though this application architecture will not have any sort of problem in terms of scalability, in terms of performance, but from a security standpoint, it is vulnerable. Circle CI जैसी कोई third party जिसकी अपने पास data security breach हुई, तो वो बहुत जो है ना affect होगी आपके platform के साथ भी, क्योंकि आपने अपने secrets उसके साथ share किए हैं और publicly access भी करो, और कोई आपके पास अपने पास कोई mechanism नहीं है कि अगर कोई third party compromise हो जाता है और आपके secrets compromise हो जाते हैं, तो how can you protect your infrastructure against that? Plus अगर कोई अपना पैकेज जो open source का यूज कर रहे हैं वो log4j की तरह vulnerable हो जाता है, and now it is able to make a connection with an alt app server and remote code execution के through वो आपके application level पर कोई चीज execute कर दे, so you are not able to protect yourself in this specific application architecture, right? So now this is an alternative, a modified architecture with relatively more security best practices applied, right? Obviously cost में इसका फर्क आएगा, लेकिन centrally अगर हम देखें तो load balancer layer पे हमने cloud armor की policy लगाई है. This specific policy is gonna scrutiny all the incoming requests which are coming to this HTTPS load balancer. तो जो regions आप लोगों ने allow किए होंगे सिर्फ वहाँ से traffic आ सकती है. उसके अलावा DDoS की protection आपके यहाँ पे मिलती है, तो अगर कोई DDoS attack कर रहा है HTTPS load balancer के ऊपर, तो you will be able to protect yourself against that, right? तो कोई malicious intent के साथ अगर आप ये application को use करना चाहेगा, तो this cloud armor policy is going to act as a first line of defense. Then we've also we've made this cluster private. मैं पिछली वाली उसके अंदर देखो उस टाइम तो this was a public cluster, this was a public DB. Now what I have done is we modified that into private cluster and private DB. इसका मतलब ये कि publicly इस पैच के अलावा कोई डायरेक्टली इन क्लस्टर्स को डेटाबेसेस को रीच नहीं कर सकता. सिक्योर कनेक्शन एस्टैब्लिश करना पड़ेगा तो आप डेटाबेस को रीच कर सकते हो और ऑथराइज्ड एक्सेस होगा तो आप क्लस्टर को रीच कर सकते हो. दैट्स व्हाट वी हैव डन. अब थर्ड पार्टी से बात करनी है तो कैसे होगी? अगर आपने प्राइवेट क्लस्टर कर दिया यू आर नॉट एबल टू कम्युनिकेट विद थर्ड पार्टी. यहाँ पे वी यूज्ड क्लाउड नेट एंड क्लाउड नेट को इंट्रोड्यूस करने से ये हुआ कि क्लाउड जितनी भी आपकी ईग्रेस कॉल्स होंगी वो क्लाउड नेट के थ्रू जाएंगी. And here you can apply outgoing firewall rules, which is going to deny egress calls to all networks, and it is only going to restrict it to authorized networks. उससे होगा क्या कहते हैं इस आर्किटेक्चर में log4j जैसी vulnerability आती थी तो वो किसी भी malicious third party LDAP सर्वर से कनेक्शन बना नहीं सकते थे और रिमोट कोड एग्जीक्यूशन होती थी. तो this is how we protect ourselves. फिर अगर हमारे पास यहाँ पर क्लाउड मॉनिटरिंग है और हमारे पास वो भी है सिक्योरिटी पॉलिसी भी, तो अगर कोई थर्ड पार्टी जिसकी कीज अगर कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाते हैं तो व्हाट विल हैपन, दिस स्पेसिफिक पॉलिसी इज गोना गेट ट्रिगर्ड, इट इज गोना रिवोक दैट थर्ड पार्टी एक्सेस एंड इट इज आल्सो गोइंग टू नोटिफाई द स्टेक होल्डर्स कि भाई ये थर्ड पार्टी जो कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो गया और इट इज गोइंग बियॉन्ड इट्स स्कोप, राइट. सो दिस इज रिलेटिवली अ बेटर आर्किटेक्चर. प्लस we've also enabled security command center. इसके थोड़े से पैसे हैं बट ये कंटिन्यूस बेसिस पे स्कैन करेगा पूरे प्लेटफॉर्म को और कोई भी कॉन्फ़िगरेशन लेवल की डिप्लॉयमेंट लेवल की वल्नरेबिलिटीज होगी वो प्लेटफॉर्म को आइडेंटिफाई करेगा और यूजर्स को बताएगा. नाउ दिस इज रिलेटिवली अ मच मोर सिक्योर आर्किटेक्चर. हमें इतना पता है कि आगे फ्यूचर में भी वल्नरेबिलिटीज आएंगी चाहे वो ओपन सोर्स पैकेजेस के हो चाहे वो थर्ड पार्टीज से हो. तो एटलीस्ट दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ एन आर्किटेक्चर गिव्स यू बेसलाइन एंड फाउंडेशनल प्रोटेक्शन against any sort of cyber security attacks. So this is and we've also implemented this specific architecture for one of our customers for which we are working for, right. And I will also recommend for other cloud users like Azure and AWS, you guys try to figure out this as well if you're working in a similar architecture. So yeah, this might be helpful, right. So any questions on this? Right. Fine. Foundational best practices. So CIS is an authority at Central of Internet Security. इससे अपनी कुछ गाइडलाइंस दी हुई है अक्रॉस IAM, मॉनिटरिंग, लॉगिंग, ठीक है, सारी सर्विसेज के लिए. तो यू कैन गो एंड यू कैन लुक दैट अप, ठीक है. वो आपको प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए हेल्प करते हैं कि किस तरीके से आप अपने जो फाउंडेशनल चेक्स हैं उनको लगा सकते हैं और एंड बेस्ड ऑन दैट यू कैन प्रोटेक्ट योर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. एंड देन वी हैव सिक्योरिटी गार्डरेल्स एज वेल. सो सिक्योरिटी बेंचमार्क्स आपको कॉन्फ़िगरेशंस देंगे जो आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे. Guardrails are different from security configuration. Guardrails are basically those policies which reside within your cloud और जैसी कोई vulnerability आती है, so they try to deny that specific vulnerability या they try to deny that specific access. So that's the difference between these two. And then we need to have remediation workflows as well. कि अच्छा भाई कोई misconfiguration हो ही गई, जैसे S3 bucket है, उसकी encryption किसी ने enable नहीं की या कोई VM ऐसी deploy कर दी है जिसके ऊपर जो public IP attached है और या वो port 22 की open है, ठीक है, security group में. So remediation workflows will go and they will remediate that specific issue. Alerting and monitoring strategy ये आपने adopt करनी है. 4 principles हैं SRE के golden, compute, memory, आपकी request count, latency, all these 4 golden principles you need to adopt an alerting and monitoring strategy that is gonna ensure that those 4 SRE golden principles are adopted and are implemented, right. So that's what you need to do for that. And then we have SOC 2 compliance framework. So SOC 2 is basically a compliance standard which is followed internationally. Data privacy, integrity, cryptography, access control, all these are fundamental pillars of SOC 2 compliance, right. So SOC 2 का framework ऐसा जो companies खुद audit करवाती हैं and it costs them approximately $25,000 to audit and get compliant. But उसके जो basic principles हैं वो तो internet पे मौजूद हैं. We can always go and look that up, and whenever we are architecting new solutions, we ensure that it is according to the SOC 2 compliance framework, right. So yeah, these are like few of the best practices that you can adopt, and these are like other compliance standards. हम लोग अभी एक प्रोडक्ट पे काम कर रहे हैं सिक्योर क्लाउड के अंदर, तो उसमें प्राइमरीली हमारा फोकस ही यही है कि हम लोग जो है वो compliance के हिसाब से ऑडिट करते हैं पूरे एनवायरनमेंट में. So what happens is you sign up your cloud account, whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, whether it's GCP, and then you are able to visualize all these compliance components, right, and what is your individual compliance standing against that specific compliance standard. So that's what we do. And other than that, it's something which individual users can also go to the cloud and read all their international standards and ensure that that's why this framework के ऊपर हमारा compliance scoring कितनी है, how much compliant we are from a compliance standpoint. Yep. So that is it. Key takeaways I hope हमारे सेशन के ये होंगे कि हमें थोड़ी बहुत shared security responsibility model का पता लगा है. We now know the potential of market, right? Because the cloud computing, it is an increasing industry. तो challenges जो applications खुद जा रही companies जिनको हम लेके जा रहे हैं, they will be facing the same challenges, right? So there is a huge potential from a business perspective as well, especially since we provide cloud services to our customers. And then I hope we've got a little bit of understanding about different compliance standards. एक हमारा plan ये भी we will be training cloud security engineers, right? तो जो new interns आए वो, plus we'll be hiring new fresh graduates and good people who are experienced in the cloud space, and we'll be training them to become a cloud security engineering workforce. So tomorrow when we develop these new business opportunities, whether they're coming directly or whether they're coming through Secure Cloud, we have a workforce who can come and sit with customers and understand their compliance posture, security posture, and work with them to resolve these issues. Obviously, we'll be doing multiple webinars. We'll be doing, we'll be writing blogs. We'll be doing some podcasts around this as well. So yeah, that is it. Any questions? Any feedback? Over to you. आपको तो कुछ बोलो, मैं तो बोलूँ के थक गया हूँ. Thank you so much for the order. Yes.
आपने जो डायग्राम दिखाया था उसमें क्लाउड नेट है.
जी. The cloud net जो basically हमारे पास एक network address transmission वाली managed service है GCP के अंदर. ठीक है, तो रहता ये है जैसे हमारे पास normally क्या होता है जब public cluster होता है हमारे पास GKE का, तो उसकी ना backend पे VMs बनी होती है, compute instances बनी होती हैं. उसके साथ they have a public IP attached. जब egress या outbound कोई call जाती है तो that goes to that public IP. जब हम private cluster कर देते हैं तो that public IP is removed, right? अब आपकी egress call बंद हो जाती है. अगर आपने egress call मारनी है और आपको एक dedicated IP चाहिए egress call के लिए, तो फिर आप उस नेटवर्क के अंदर cloud net को configure करते हैं, which runs behind your private cluster. और फिर जितनी भी outbound request होती है वो cloud net के through जारी होती है. तो जो third party है उसको cloud net की IP मिलेगी होती है. और plus cloud net level पे you can apply multiple security firewall policies, outgoing policies, जो कि whitelist करेगी, blacklist करेगी, allow deny करेगी. तो इससे आपका जो है आउटगोइंग ट्रैफिक भी जो है वो कंट्रोल होता है. अक्सर एप्लीकेशंस के अंदर व्हाट वी डू, हम सिर्फ इंग्रेस पे काम करते हैं. चाहे फायरवॉल रूल लगा दिया, इनकमिंग को हमने रोक दिया, क्लाउड आर्मर पॉलिसी लगा दी, आउटगोइंग पे कोई ध्यान नहीं दे रहा होता है. Log4j की वल्नरेबिलिटी का सबसे बड़ा कॉज ही ये था कि चूंकि वो जो आपका JNDI लुकअप था वो क्या करता था, वो एक LDAP सर्वर डायरेक्टरी सर्विस सर्वर के साथ कनेक्शन एस्टैब्लिश करता था और फिर वहां से जो उसको स्ट्रिंग में इंस्ट्रक्शंस मिली होती थी वो उस हिसाब से वो रजिस्टर करता था. और JNDI is a very good tool, right? It was a very good feature for when we were moving application from dev to production, right? So तो आपको environment variables के अंदर secret store करने की जरूरत नहीं थी. आप सिंपल एक इंस्ट्रक्शन देते थे JNDI को और हिसाब से वो खुद ही लुकअप करता था डायरेक्टरी सर्विस में. अच्छा भाई ये एनवायरनमेंट है तो ये कॉन्फ़िगरेशन है. It was a very good use case, but that became exploited क्योंकि वो सिस्टम लेवल पे कमांड्स एग्जीक्यूट होती थी. और उसका अगर आउटबाउंड चूंकि कंपनीज ध्यान नहीं देती, आउटबाउंड ट्रैफिक खुला होता है, कहीं पे भी कोई भी बंदा थर्ड पार्टी रिक्वेस्ट मार सकता है, तो वो मैलिशियस LDAP सर्वर से कनेक्शन एस्टैब्लिश हुआ और वो एक मैलिशियस कोड डाउनलोड होकर सिस्टम लेवल पे एग्जीक्यूट हुआ. किसी डेवलपर कोई गलती से अगर स्क्रिप्ट चलाते हैं डेव लेवल पे, QA लेवल पे, ठीक है, तो आउटबाउंड अगर बंद होगी तो किसी थर्ड पार्टी के साथ वो मैलिशियस चीज या कोई आ नहीं सकती. तो दैट इज अ वेरी गुड सिक्योरिटी पर्सपेक्टिव और क्लाउड नेट के थ्रू इस आर्किटेक्चर में ये पॉसिबल होता है. कि प्राइवेट के अंदर क्या परफॉर्मेंस रिड्यूस नहीं होती क्या इसके थ्रू? प्राइवेट और पब्लिक में डिफरेंस होता है. हां, देखिए परफॉर्मेंस फ्रॉम अगर सपोज करें मैंने क्लस्टर प्राइवेट किया हुआ है बट इसके साथ मैंने कुछ सर्विसेज को लोड बैलेंसर के थ्रू एक्सपोज किया है, तो जो रिक्वेस्ट इस लोड बैलेंसर के थ्रू आएगी वो तो इंटरनली राउट हो जाएगी, उसको ऑथराइज होगा. लेकिन डायरेक्टली इस क्लस्टर को कोई पब्लिकली रीच नहीं कर सकता. अगर पब्लिक क्लस्टर की बात करूं तो उसका ना इस लोड बैलेंसर को सरपास करके भी VMs के थ्रू, क्योंकि पब्लिक IPs लगी है नेटवर्क पे, तो यूजर्स और मैलिशियस जो है अटैकर्स या बॉट्स हैं तो वो आ जाते हैं. हमने एक बार एक टेस्ट के लिए एक डेटाबेस पब्लिकली अपने लॉन्च करते डेव एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर ये कस्टमर की, तो हुआ क्या, वो बिकॉज़ इट वाज इन अ पब्लिक नेटवर्क एंड यूजर नेम भी बस देसी सा था, वो बिल्कुल डिफॉल्ट जो होता है, और कोड उसकी 3366 जो भी है 3306 जो Hyperscale की वो ओपन थी. तो within few minutes that database got compromised और उसके अंदर database अपना crypto mining start हो गई. तो that is how critical it is. तो username password तो अच्छे रखने ही, but public access is the first line of defense, right? Databases नहीं रखने हैं, फजूल सर्विसेज माइक्रो सर्विसेज को एक्सपोज ना करें, और जो भी सर्विस एक्सपोज हो रही है उसके पास एक क्लाउड आर्मर पॉलिसी या कोई सिक्योरिटी पॉलिसी लगी हो जो कि उस चीज को फिल्टर करे इनकमिंग ट्रैफिक को, और कोई मलेशियस एक्टिविटी होती तो उसको फॉरन करना है. तो जब I hope it was not very overwhelming, guys. I speak very fast and sometimes I get carried away.
Can you go back to the previous slide, not the next one? And cloud security. So I have a question about cloud security command center. Is it going to proactively detect risk or is it going to detect it?
So there are different tiers of security command center, right? There's a basic tier, there's a premium tier as well. So from a basic perspective, it will run a scan after a scheduled period, maybe 24 hours, maybe 1 week, whatever, right? But if you go with the premium command center support, then you have the privilege to schedule those scans as well. Whenever there's a new vulnerability, it is not going to detect it in real time. For real time, you will need to have some sort of CloudWatch events or some sort of monitoring checks that will reside within the infrastructure, so that at least they can report to security command center. और सिक्योरिटी कमांड सेंटर का फायदा ये कि जस्ट लाइक क्लाउड सीएसपी राइट विद इन द जीएसपी प्लेटफॉर्म, कोई भी आप सर्विस यूज कर रहे हो उसके अंदर कोई भी अगर हाई लेवल वल्नरेबिलिटीज, मीडियम लेवल, लो लेवल होगी, उसको ये आइडेंटिफाई करेगा. इट्स गोना डिस्प्ले दैट ऑन इट्स डैशबोर्ड एंड प्लस इट गिव्स यू द प्रिविलेज टू हैव दोस ऑटोमेटेड वर्कफ्लो रेमेडिएशंस in place. So that whenever new vulnerability comes, they can trigger those remediation workflows and resolve and reduce those risks. आप कुछ कह रहे हैं?
अलर्टिंग एंड मॉनिटरिंग स्ट्रेटजी आपने बताई, क्या कोई मैनुअल प्रोसेस है?
देखिए अलर्टिंग एंड मॉनिटरिंग स्ट्रेटजी, इसके ऊपर ना जैसे गूगल ने पूरा एक अपना एसआरई का एक डॉक्यूमेंट भेजा है. जैसे मैं खुद ऐसे एसआरई काम कर रहा हूँ एडी सप्लाई में, तो अलर्टिंग एंड मॉनिटरिंग फाउंडेशनल लेवल पे तो आप 4 चीजों के ऊपर करेंगे. भाई आपका जो आपकी सैचुरेशन है, मतलब जैसे आपकी कंप्यूट यूटिलाइजेशन, मेमोरी यूटिलाइजेशन, ये हो गया. एरर काउंट्स कितने आ रहे हैं एप्लीकेशन लेवल पे, उनको आप मॉनिटर करें. और आप उसके साथ लेटेंसी, जो इनकमिंग जब रिक्वेस्ट आती है तो कितनी देर में आप उसको रिस्पांस देते हैं, और फिर कितनी ट्रैफिक आ रही है उसका रिक्वेस्ट काउंट किया है. तो इन सारे जो आपके एट्रीब्यूट्स हैं इसके अगेंस्ट आपको मॉनिटरिंग बनानी है. अच्छा भाई फॉर सपोज करें सीपीयू है 70% यूटिलाइजेशन, इफ योर सीपीयू हैज रीच्ड 70% यूटिलाइजेशन, देन the alerting and monitoring strategy is going to trigger a notification channel which will at least send notification to your stakeholders informing them, okay bhai, the CPU is now about to choke, yeah, it's reaching its maximum limit, right? Same is the case with errors. कंपनीज का अपना अपना एक एरर बजट होता है फ्रॉम एन एसआरई स्ट्रेटजी. अगर वो एरर बजट उनका डिसॉल्व होता है तो फिर उनका एसएलएस और एसएलआईज के ऊपर इंपैक्ट आता है, एंड देन दे लूज बिजनेस वैल्यू टू द कस्टमर डायरेक्टली. तो अगर इस तरह के प्रॉपर अलर्ट्स आपने मल्टीपल अलर्ट्स मल्टीपल एप्लीकेशंस के आप लोगों को सेट करने पड़ते हैं. अगर वो सेट करें तो एक इन्फॉर्म डिसीजन के थ्रू यू आर एबल टू इंश्योर दैट अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ द एप्लीकेशन इज देयर एट द मैक्सिमम, और प्लस जो एरर बजट है वो आपका कंट्रोल रहता है. हर कंपनी एक थ्रेशोल्ड रखती है कि भाई 4 घंटे तक एप्लीकेशन शायद उनकी हो सकती है, महीने में डाउन हो. बट अगर वो 4 घंटे एक ही दिन में डाउन हो गया तो नाउ दे डोंट हैव द लेवरेज, राइट? नाउ दे विल लूज एसएलएस एंड बिजनेस वैल्यू, potentially even losing the entire customer. So that is why we need a proper alerting and monitoring strategy. इसमें डैशबोर्ड्स बनते हैं, चार्ट्स होती हैं, और फिर आपके अप टाइम चेक्स बनते हैं कि भाई अगर एप्लीकेशन डाउन हुई है 3 मिनट के लिए तो फौरन एक नोटिफिकेशन, आप सिर्फ नोटिफिकेशन ना है, पूरे L1 L2 L3 आपके जो वर्कफोर्स है एसआरई के उनको इंटीमेट करें, और राइट पीपल आर इन्वॉल्वड एट द राइट टाइम टू रेमेडिएट दैट इशू एंड मेक श्योर योर एप्लीकेशन इज अप एंड रनिंग. स्माइल कर रहे हैं आशीष भाई, बोल रहे हैं भाई मतलब क्या हुआ. Right, so I guess that is it. Any more questions? Yes sir.
आपकी
AWS है ना तो
सिक्योर है क्लाउड
जी.
तो इसके कोई हमारे कंपटीटर नहीं है, कोई अल्टरनेटिव नहीं है
बहुत सारे,
और अगर है तो सिक्योर क्लाउड किस तरह डिफरेंस क्रिएट करता है?
भाई ये जवाब तो आपको सभी ने नहीं, ठीक है ना? तो जनरल एक प्रोडक्ट लेके आया था, अपना आइडिया लेके आया था, एक डिस्कशन पॉइंट लेके आया था टॉपिक. But yes, secure cloud from a competitor's perspective, there are a lot of competitors, right? We have the number one is the Prisma Cloud, right? We have Wiz, we have Orca, all these companies, right? So they also provide cloud management, security management posture tool. So secure cloud is just like that. The point is how are we different? The difference is जो इस वक्त major cloud market में आ रहा है security में, वो लोग risk और issues को identify तो कर लेते हैं, When it comes to fixing and resolving the issues, that is the challenge. So production workloads में आप जाके ऐसे ही नहीं चीजें remove कर सकते. भाई सब चीजें रहते हैं. Log4j की vulnerability थी, patch दे दिया, फिर companies were helpless. बोला यार मैं ये patch था जिसको update करूँगा latest version में, मेरी तो application बंद हो जाएगी. मैं क्या करूँ? This is one of the challenges, right? Which तो यहाँ पर Secure Cloud क्या करेगा? Secure Cloud will provide them with proper remediation steps where they cannot afford automatic remediations. And we'll give them expert engineers, subject matter experts who can sit with them and make a proper plan of their remediation strategy. That's the advantage that we have over our competitors, and we'll be creating that workforce inshallah.
And there is another USP for Secure Cloud, that is our scaling is really cost efficient compared to our competitors. So that would be one of the USPs of Secure Cloud.
How it is cost effective?
Very cost effective.
How?
How very cost effective? I don't know the exact pricing
So
model.
it is cost effective because दूसरे जो टूल हैं उनकी ऑटोमेटिक स्कैनिंग चलती रहती है. So वो क्या करते हैं, रिपोर्ट्स डंप करते जाते हैं लाइक क्लाइंट के क्लाउड एनवायरनमेंट में. जबकि सिक्योर क्लाउड की जो स्कैनिंग है वो ऑन डिमांड है. Whenever you need it, you are on it.
मैंने सिक्योर क्लाउड के पैकेजेस देखे हैं जिसमें मंथली और ईयरली पैकेजेस हैं. अगर मैं मंथली पैकेज पे वन टाइम जो है रन कर देता हूँ और सारे बग्स फिक्स कर देता हूँ तो मुझे दोबारा जरूरत ही नहीं. तो ईयरली प्लान उसकी क्या जरूरत है?
क्या जरूरत है?
मैं ईयरली प्लान
थोड़ा सा डिबेटेबल है. आई थिंक इसको थोड़ा डिस्कशन हम करेंगे. तो कॉस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव से मेन चैलेंज ये कि हम जो प्लेटफॉर्म की कॉस्ट है दैट इज डिटेक्टेबल, राइट? $300 or $3,000 is nothing for enterprise level customer. The main value which the product is giving is that compliance standing, security posture, and plus a dedicated support engineer or security engineer who's going to work with the customer. और main cost उसकी हो, ठीक है? तो from a pricing perspective हमारे कुछ competitors हैं एक VM के $350 है, right? तो पॉइंट इज अगर कस्टमर जस्ट 40,000 VM हैं या चलो 1000 VM भी हैं तो यू डू द नंबर्स, राइट? तो एक तो वो फ्रॉम अ कॉस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव जो एक बैरियर है कॉस्ट का, that is something that Secure Cloud is resolving, right, at a fundamental level. And then secondly, because we have this advantage, we are very agile, or we are not just limited to our cloud, right? Secure Cloud. We have the ability to utilize native tools as well. Security Command Center को भी हम use कर सकते हैं. We can also use AWS Inspector, AWS Security Hub, Guard Duty, all these tools, all these native tools to ingest value and help the customer secure and get compliant. That's our advantage. Secure Cloud will just be an entry point, right? Eventually, in the next 2 years, right, of course, it's going to become a full-fledged, CSPM, which is our vision. But even today, it's of great value to any small business unit, which is provisioning its services in the cloud. भाई एक सवाल होता है, भाई मेरी 2 वेबसाइट्स चल रही हैं, मेरी 2 वेब एप्लीकेशंस चल रही हैं क्लाउड पे, बताओ सिक्योर है या नहीं? क्या जवाब है इसका? कोई एक सिंपल जवाब नहीं है ना, मतलब बहुत सारे एट्रीब्यूट्स इसमें मौजूद हैं, तो भाई हैक क्यों नहीं हो जाएगी वेबसाइट भी? अब इसका कोई जवाब नहीं है. मतलब देयर आर अ लिस्ट ऑफ सिक्योरिटी चेक्स, कॉन्फ़िगरेशंस दैट यू नीड टू फॉलो, एंड देन इवन देन वो हैक हो जाती है, ठीक है? तो मैंने सिक्योरिटी आर्किटेक्चर दिया, इट माइट हैव सम लूपहोल्स, इट माइट हैव सम वल्नरेबिलिटीज. जो वही वे JNDI लुकअप मॉड्यूल आया सिक्योरिटी पर्सपेक्टिव से, दैट इज अ वेरी गुड फीचर ऑफ Log4j, एंड येट दे हैव डिसेबल्ड इट बिकॉज़ वो सोचा ही नहीं था उस पैरामीटर से वो एक्सप्लॉइट हो गया, ठीक है?
To add to your question, you said कि मैं एक monthly plan ले लूँगा या yearly plan ले लूँगा और मैं सारे issues fix कर दूँगा. तो क्या आप अपने business को scale नहीं करेंगे? That means आपका cloud भी scale होगा, आपके resources बढ़ेंगे. So you cannot ensure that future में मेरे resources जो होंगे वो secure होंगे, right? So you need a tool to make sure that आपको integrate करता जाए these are possible risks and you have to resolve them accordingly. So that is what Secure Cloud is supposed to do.
Thank you so much. I think that is all, right? So thank you for your time, and inshallah we will be having now it is the main part.